Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid, and today we're going to be wrapping up our little series on building the 2026 offense by taking a look at what I feel needs to be added to the 2026 offense to make it more successful. And the easy answer to that question, obviously, is just executing better at what we tried to do last year. But I still feel there are some holes in the system. There are some holes in the philosophy behind the system that are holding the offensive players back a bit and are needed, again, to make this offense feel more complete. And I think what we're going to do here is from the written piece that I put together on Substack, again, I'll link it below. We're actually going to go in reverse order because I think the first two segments, the last two segments in the written piece, the first two we're going to talk about here, I can get through here pretty quickly. And the last part's going to take a little bit of time to talk about. So the first thing that I would really like to see added to the 2026 offense is the ability to use tempo and to use tempo as a weapon. I know in the Phil Longo era, the fact that we did not huddle really ruffled the panties of the sweater vest crowd. Because I think a lot of people don't understand the purpose of a huddle and why today a lot of times it is not necessary. But I'm not even really going too deep on the idea that I think this offense should return to the hurry up, no huddle. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there are times where going slow and taking your time and huddling really kills momentum. And there are times when huddling and taking your time really kills a chance to gain momentum. So, what I would really like to see is just more diversity in the use of tempo. Go fast, go slow. Because when you are changing the tempo and when you are keeping the defense off balance because they're not quite sure when that ball is going to be snapped, you gain an advantage there. But also, it really forces you as an offensive play caller to be more deliberate in what you are calling. Whether you're speeding up or slowing down, you have to be deliberate because you have to take time into account. And has there been times, or were there times last season where we might have done things more difficultly than they should have been? Of course. Has there been times that maybe there was too much eye candy? There was too much movement. There was too much complication. And in the whole time that it took us to get from point A to point Q to get the play off, we lost the plot and the play ended in a disaster. I think the answer is yes. Using tempo, playing faster means you don't have time for the entire dog and pony show. You just need to have time for the highlights. You have time for what's really important. Conversely, then when you decide to play with the tempo and go slower, the eye candy has more meaning. if you're using motions and shifts and everything, and you're snapping the ball basically at the same time of the play clock every time, defenses can get in a rhythm. And that takes away from the whole point of all your movement. If they don't know when that snap is coming, the defense has to simplify. And they have to pay more attention to what's going on because they don't know when the ball's being snapped. That's important. It creates new chances for free yards because you're catching the defense off balance. And it just creates stress. And by dictating the tempo does not mean controlling the clock. Dictating the tempo means we control when the ball is snapped. And in doing so, we control the clock. Both plus and minus, positive and negative. And it would only benefit the offense to explore more uses of tempo and to not be, with all of the bells and whistles that this offense has, to be so vanilla when it comes to tempo and to only speed it up in the 4-minute drill, the 2-minute drill, etc. You become predictable. And if there's one thing that this offense needs to get away from, and I have been saying this for 20 plus years, is to stop being so predictable. And that's one step forward that we can take towards being less predictable. All right, so beyond tempo, another more philosophical answer that I think needs to be brought to the offense in 2026, and it's going to go against something that Luke Fickell has championed since about halfway through the 2023 season. And that is the idea of building an offense around multiple backs and going with a more by committee approach to the carry distribution, the rep distribution. Because if you've looked at Jeff Grimes' offenses in the past, they were never built around the guy. And the problem is when you build an offense around one guy and everyone behind him is not an exact clone of that guy, then when he gets injured, your offense suffers. So instead of trying to make your entire running back depth chart clones of your number one guy, you have your common denominators and your non-negotiables, your skills that every back in your system needs to have. But then every player on that roster has one or two things that they can do on top of your non-negotiables that they can be used in specialized roles. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the common specialized roles is your first and second down back, your every down back, third down back, your short yardage specialist. You know, those are typical roles. And I'm not necessarily saying that because if you're predictable with your depth chart, you could be predictable with your to the defense of what you're going to do in those situations. But if you distribute the touches and you distribute the carries and you distribute the reps to situations where each player can be at his most efficient, you are going to make your offense that much more efficient. And that's something that we need to get better at. And flat out, by doing so, you are lessening the chance that those players are going to get injured because they are operating at peak efficiency. Therefore, they are in a better position to at least avoid the wear and tear style injuries that we have gotten in the past. But also, it keeps more people happy. So you're not going to end up getting multiple guys leaving in the transfer portal. You're going to get a stable, healthy group of running backs that are going to feel like they have a role. Now, on top of the idea of just being smarter and developing your depth chart better and more efficiently, I also like the idea of just using multiple running backs and going with 2 running backs. I'm not talking about a fullback. Okay, fullbacks in this system have been used as what they are, as blockers. And sure, that's a way that we could get more reps there. But I'm talking about the idea of multiple tailbacks and getting the defense to have to respect the entire field in the run game, not only in the passing game. So, what we mean by that, just going to go into huddle a little bit. Just talk about some situations where you can use multiple backs on the field at the same time and not make yourself feel like you're in a situation where you're putting your offense at a disadvantage. Okay? We've been talking since the beginning of this offseason about who's going to play slot receiver. Well, why not put? Come on. Huddle. There we go. Am I going to edit that out? You'll have to wait and see. Okay? Putting Darian Dupree in the slot and using him as a slot receiver, but then having him be your jet sweep player coming off of as a option to be used when we run wide zone. When we run wide zone, come on, I need to be a little quicker with this. I apologize. Okay. We can go jet. We can go wide zone. We can put this player in motion and turn it into an orbit motion to then run any variant of zone of read, whether it be zone read, whether it be we can run a power read. And again, we want to get back to old school power football. Well, let's do that. And let's run old school power. And let's get a read action where our QB can keep the ball off of this action, and we get our pitch man in the back out of the motion and into the pitch. Hell, it doesn't get much more old school than that. We could take them and simplify it even more and just put them in the backfield And everything that we just ran, we can run again with two backs in the backfield. We can run wide zone. We can run split wide zone. We can run wide zone here and send a pitch man. The options are endless. When you have dynamic athletes that can be used in different ways, you can run the same plays in multiple different ways, and you can make your offense just that much more dynamic. I love that word dynamic, and I'm going to continue to use it. You get my idea. But you look at the 2025 offense, any situation where you saw Tretch get the ball, where you saw Tyrell Henry get the ball, where you saw one of those guys lining up in the backfield and motioning out, any situation like that, you can replace that with a running back. And you change how the defense sees those plays. You can still run those plays with Tyrell Henry, but when you change it from Tyrell Henry to Darian Dupree, or from Tyrell Henry to Brian Jackson, or to Nate Palmer, or to Fat Boy Wiggins, if all I care, you change how the defense sees the offense. You change the reaction. You multiply the offense without having to re-scheme up your offense. And that is something we need to have. We need to have a bit more creativity, and the easiest way to get that creativity is by using different personnel. And for me, it starts with the running backs. All right, so I'm going to talk about the next segment here before we get into it, because I'm going to have to take a second to reset up everything. So, beyond the idea of using multiple backs, a big area that I feel was missing in the 2025 offense that needs to be an emphasis if you want this offense to be more complete. And that is the idea of expanding and building upon the intermediate passing game. Now, what do we mean by the intermediate passing game? Well, the intermediate passing game, it depends on how you set up your drops with the quarterback and how you set up your route progressions. But for me, I set up all of my passing plays built off the footwork of my QB and their drop timing. Okay, so I have in my system, I have 4 drops that I use. I have what I call Darian's just going to live there because my keyboard is not working right now. I have my first one, which I call my quick one. Okay, and a quick one pass drop is just quarterback catches the ball. My quarterback's right-handed, so you can imagine this as I'm saying it. He steps back with his right foot. As soon as his right foot hits the ground, he's throwing the football. And these are usually reserved for either access throws, where I am throwing a ball off of a run play. Say, for example, I've got a wide zone going to my left here. Backside X receiver is capped at 7, 8, 9 yards. I'll give my quarterback an access where that backside guy's going to run a hitch. Quarterback's just going to catch it, put one foot in the ground, throw the hitch. That's an access throw. Another place that I use it a lot is the quick screen game. So we could be setting up here just a quick cutoff screen where, get everybody aligned correctly. Okay, we'll run some kind of action like this. And I'm just going to run a little quick stay screen to my outside receiver and try to get him up in the alley as quickly as possible. Do that off of one step. Okay, that is the quick one. My casual one, or what I usually just call my one-step drop, is the idea of quarterback is going to take that same one step, maybe a little bit slower, but off of that one step, he is going to make his first read. So his right foot gets his hips and his shoulders aligned to the first route in the progression. So for example, got a little Y stick combo here. Boom. Quarterback's going to take a step with his right foot. His right foot hits the ground. His eyes are right to the stick. And so when his right foot hits the ground, he should be in timed up for that first route to be open. If it's not, he goes directly to number 2 and readjusts his hips and his shoulders to there. So the timing is different. At my level, a casual one-step drop is usually under 5 yards, but can get up to 7 or 8, depending on how free and how open that route is going to be. Okay, Division 1, those options may vary. But at the core of the intermediate game at the collegiate level, for me, is going to be my quarterback is going to take 3 steps. When his third step hits the ground, that's when route number 1 needs to be open. So, for example, we could run a situation where we can run a little cross from our X receiver, and he can get to a landmark and either sit down or continue to run with a switch release to a vertical ball there. And then we could run a mesh, something underneath. We could run a burst release with an out, whatever. This is my primary route that we're talking about in the intermediate game. So 1, 2, 3, my eyes are right here to the X receiver. Is he open? Yes, no. In pure progression world, in the read world, okay, 1, 2, 3, we're reading the boundary receiver or boundary safety. Is he dropping to the middle because we're rotating? And is that space open? If not, no. We're going to go to number 2, or we're going to go to the backside, whatever. I don't care how you read it. That's not the point of what I'm talking about. Is I want routes that when my quarterback gets to his third step, his first option is going to be open, and it's going to be in that 10 to 15 yard range. And then there's either going to be a shot behind it or the ability to come underneath. There's going to be options. Right now, our intermediate passing game would be one route like this and then everything going deep. And usually that route is just kind of a holding route. So I want to see routes that are timed quicker, that hit in that middle area, and that create layers for the passing game. These kind of routes can also be timed and built up around RPOs. And in my world, an RPO footwork takes away one step in our footwork afterwards. So if I want to run a 3-step route combination, it's going to be RPO with a 1-step. Okay, so for example, we can get a wide zone action here, and we can run a little spike route with a curl behind it, and we're going to action 1 step, 1 to 2. And that's the same as if it would be if the quarterback took 3 steps and then 1 to 2. Okay, so just taking the passing game and using the entire field. It is not just screens and chuck and duck. It's everything in between, because you move the ball around and it is going to cause the defense to have to cover the entire field, which is, I know it's a very air raid idea, but it's smart football. And we need to play a little bit smarter football this year. And we need to force these defenders to play the entire field. So what I'm going to be showing you here next is I actually went through and did a little research, and I have found a handful of what I consider intermediate or short to intermediate to long passing concepts that could easily be implemented by any offense out there, but for sure could be used by us, and I think would take advantage of the type of players we have, and they could be used in different ways. And we'll talk about it once we see it. I'm going to show you the clips here, how they could be better utilized maybe with our personnel going forward. And that's what we're going to take a look at. So let me just get this all reset back up, and we will do just that. All right, here we go. And first up, we have the University of Texas. They are going to come out in a 3-by-1 set here. 11 personnel. Do an exit motion from the Z receiver. And we're just going to run a variation of double ends. We just got a little shallow from our tight end and a delayed in from number 2. 1, 2, 3. Now these are short routes, but we look at the feet. 1, 2, 3, and a little hitch. We're just waiting. We're letting this develop. But look how much space this is creating by our tight end coming across the field. We've got our X at the top of the screen running a little basic route. You're building layers on top. So you could go 1 to 2 to 3 and all working in that 10 to 15-yard range. At about 15 when he gets across the field. But we're utilizing the entire field. And this is also important too. And we talked about this during the previous video. Okay. This ball is, let's just make sure we get this right. Okay. So this ball is going to be caught at 6 yards. 6 yards just beyond the sticks. And he is going to add another 10 yards on top of it. Sometimes you have to give your players the ability to do so. And that's what Texas did in this case. And it ended up getting them a first down. All right, so next play. This should look familiar. Hey, it's Colton Joseph. And we talked about this during our previewing his play style in a previous video where Old Dominion ran a ton of variations of switch release to deep cross to deep curl. a lot of routes like this. And we're going to see we've got top of the screen, switch release to a cross, deep cross. And at the bottom of the screen, we got switch release to the spike. And it is just literally just straight running to the middle of the field. And you allow the progression. We look at the top of the screen. 1, down, and boom. Stick it right behind. Now, this is a shot, but it's a shot with options. And the timing. 1, 2, 3, set up. Gonna hitch up. Because the whole shot, which is probably the first route, is not there. Number 2 is the spike. It is there. Options. It's a home run shot disguised as an intermediate passing route. Because if he liked the leverage at the top of the screen, he would have ran the same progression. He would have looked whole shot to cross. But instead, he read whole shot to spike, and it turns into a big play for the Monarch offense, something that we could easily do with the Badgers. Next up, North Texas. Love watching North Texas's film. They have such a dynamic offense, and it's going to be really great to see, or interesting to see, how this offense translates to the Big 12 now that Eric Morris and 75% of this roster are in Stillwater. But we're going to start here. Again, 11 personnel. Going to motion out, and we're just going to run the Y cross. I mean, it does not get much more air raid than this. The progression is going to be number 1 on the choice to 2 on the cross. They're running their crosser at about 15 by the time he gets level. So we would read 1 to 2. This would be an access. We're going to read 1 on the choice, 2 to the cross, 3 would be the dig behind it. 1, and they just run kind of 1 step and a shuffle. Again, I'd like my footwork to be a little bit more crisp than that, but it's a standard concept. We ran variations of Y cross. We just never seemed to get to the cross. And I think part of it is how we built to it. Because we would run this cross, but we would do it out of some kind of funky backfield action, play action. Here, we're going to reach low to high instead of run and then have a crosser. Low to high. 1, find the window, 2, boom. Nice game. Next up, hey, Old Dominion again. How are they going to do things differently this time? Okay. 4 wide, switch release. And now we take the whole shot. So we run the curl. And we get 2 committed to the curl. And that leaves a nickel on a slot. Good night. Bottom of the screen. Switch release to a skinny post and a curl. But just because we have our eyes start low does not mean in the intermediate passing game we can't take a shot. Of course we could take a shot. You build the shot into the play, but it's not all or nothing where the shot is the play. The shot is the byproduct of this cross being successful. I mean, because you can see at one point, Virginia Tech ends up with 3 players spying this cross route. And that opens up a shot. Free yards, manufacturing free yards. Something we did not do last year that we need to do more. All right, next up we have San Diego State. And then here's an idea of using RPO or play action in the intermediate game. So, boom, 1 foot in the ground. And then we're just going to run the glance off of this action. And then if this glance isn't there, we've got the slant coming in behind. Very similar to the concept we saw in the first play. Just the idea of working inside out with similar routes, that if the first route doesn't clear, the second route will trail. And just simple. This, I mean, you can see blocking-wise, they're running wide zone. That fits into what we do nicely. And not saying that we don't run RPOs off of this. We did. We just need to do it more, because it all builds off of what we do. And it works the entire field. It's going to get to a point where teams can't drop that extra safety down in the box to stop the wide zone. Novel approach, right? You can use your run game to set up the intermediate passing game. All right, and that brings us back to the top, and that brings us to the end of the film. And now it's time to wrap up what we're talking about here. And it all comes back to the original point, the original idea of the original written piece. And why we're doing this is, in order to build, run, and maintain a successful offense, you need to build it around the players you have and around their skill sets. And what I have hopefully shown is it won't take much to build an offense around Colton Joseph's skill set. Because in this day and age of modern football, a mobile QB with a strong arm, it's not the unicorn that it used to be. And all I'm asking is for the offense to use the players how many of them have been used since middle school. Because it always comes down to their skill set. And we have got to get away from the philosophy, and this is how Wisconsin football plays, to Wisconsin football is successful because it takes their players and it makes them better by development and through the systematic approach to the offense. That's what we need. And that will bring the best out of Colton Joseph. I don't care if pseudo Pac-12 podcasts think he is not nearly as good as some quarterback that UCLA has that could barely get 20 passing touchdowns in his career. If you build the offense around what your quarterback can do good, then you will have success. And that's something that we have not done at Wisconsin ever. Even our best offenses that we've had at Wisconsin with Russell Wilson, that was not Paul Chryst building as the offensive coordinator the offense around Russell Wilson's skill set. He was just skilled enough to do what they did here better. And between then and now, there were a lot of quarterbacks that were held back by the offensive systems. We can't have that anymore. The offense, it can be RBU, but the offense runs through the QB. No ifs, ands, or buts. And it starts with building a system that puts him at the center and builds everyone around him to support him and builds a system around him to support him. If we do that, we will have a successful offense. Let's see if it ends up happening. All right. That is going to wrap this up. Going to wrap up this little series. Thank you, as always, for watching. I know these X's and O's videos and this more philosophical, systematic stuff is a bit dry, and it's not the film study that maybe we were built on here or the punditry that the algorithm wants me to do. But like I said, it's what I like to do. And if it keeps me motivated to put this stuff out, we're going to keep doing it. And it's going to get us through the long off season until we finally get some actual game film to break down. So if you're still here, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.